Welcome to another episode of the Eric Crocker Show. I am your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back. And of course, as always, we are joined by Coach Desi. Coach Desi, on today to discuss San Francisco 49ers locking up the number one seed. Brock Purdy breaking the 49ers single season passing record in just his second year. And of course, we're talking injuries. Christian McCaffrey, Eric Crocker, and a bunch of other guys that are dealing with some nagging things going on as the 49ers head into the playoffs. But first, I want to tell you that this show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Download the app or go to underdogfantasy.com. And when you do that, make sure that you use promo code Crocky and they will double your deposit up to $100. It used to be $500. I think that was better. But $100, up to $100. All right. So make sure you guys go do that right now. I'm not going to lie. Underdog Fantasy, there's times when I'm hot and there's times when it's like, a little bit normal. I am in the biggest slump right now. I mean, I haven't even played in a few days because the slump is that bad. It's just terrible. Okay. I can't even give advice to people right now because I'm like, look, you don't want to take my advice on anything pertaining to Underdog, but maybe y'all will have more luck. So download the app, go to underdogfantasy.com, use promo code Crocky right now. Let's go. All right, Coach Desi, how you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I've recovered from the Ravens loss. It was tough in the household. Christmas was tough. We were on vacation on top of it, so I just had to hear it the whole time.
So were you on vacation watching the game? Because I know I talked to you a little bit Wednesday, and you're like, you guys were hitting the slope, skiing and everything. Had the steam from the 49ers loss wore off by Wednesday?
Yeah, it was rough. So we flew out on Christmas Day to Buffalo. And so we watched the game in the home of strong Buffalo fans. And that didn't help. They were like, well, we should be on your side. We want the Ravens to lose. But they were, talking some stuff about Brock Purdy and, Josh Allen should be MVP. He's got the best QBR. And I was like, wait a minute. He does not have the best QBR. So I had to bring it up.
Okay, so he might actually have the best QBR. He doesn't have the best passer rating.
Okay. No, he has the best QBR at that point. I brought it up.
Okay, at that point. Okay. And I know a lot of people, they'll say quarterback rating. I think Peacock said it the other day. And by the way, make sure you guys listen to Locked On 49ers. Come at you 5 days a week. All right. I got this little virtual background. There we go. Five. There we go. 5. Anyways, I think Peacock had said quarterback rating, but most people, when they hear that, they're thinking passer rating.
Yeah.
QBR, as they like to say, but the quarterback rating is a metric that was made up by ESPN. So I want to say Trent Dilfer helped with it, and it factors in everything. It factors in, sacks, running. It factors everything in. As opposed to passer rating, it's more completion attempts, attempts, completions, interceptions. That's more like passer rating. It's pure passer rating.
Got it.
As opposed to QBR, which factors everything in, and then it spits out a number. So you can be number one in QBR and not be number one in passer rating. So
yeah.
Now
at that point we were good.
That was tough watching those guys, and we had talked a lot about Brock Purdy potentially being the NFL MVP in year 2, kind of like Lamar Jackson did, but he kind of stole the stage. And right now, it is virtually impossible to give the award to anyone but Lamar, who had a big game. I think just watching the quarterbacks this year for the MVP award, which has turned into a quarterback award, this is a down year. And if there was any year where a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who has over 2,000 scrimmage yards, should get MVP, it would be this year. I think that don't force it to a quarterback because it's known as a quarterback award. When you're comparing numbers to the past and all the past, guys, it's not great this year from the quarterback perspective. I think Dak Prescott leads the NFL in passing touchdowns, and he has 33 or something like that. And you go back a year or so or 2 years, and you're seeing guys win the award with 45 touchdowns, 50 touchdowns, 52, whatever it is, and it's 32, 33 touchdowns this year. Not great passing yards. Brock Purdy's second. Excuse me. And we'll put some things in perspective because he actually broke Jeff Garcia's single season passing yard record for the 49ers, which was 4,200 something yards. Well, Brock, where he's at right now, awesome, did a good job breaking it. even with him breaking it, and again, we're talking about MVP caliber season, and everything else factors in as well, not just passing yards, but touchdowns. But Peacock and I actually looked it up. The 49ers record, as it stands right now, through 16 games, right, which most of the guys that have records, a lot of it was 16 games. So through 16 games, and we'll see if he plays week 17. We'll discuss that. But Brock is, if you had to list every team and their single season record, the he would be like 28th in the NFL or 29th in the NFL. So it's
In
not
his
even
first
like the 49ers are really outdated with their yards, which again, the system, and they don't throw the ball a whole lot. They're not throwing the ball, around the field. The fact that it's Joe Montana, Jeff Garcia, the last person that held the record in like 2002, 2003, that is a long time, especially since everybody throws so much. But 49ers just haven't had that consistent quarterback play. So even finally breaking a record of 4,200 something yards, it's still like low in the amount when you look at the rest of the league and what other teams are. But it was cool to see him do it in just his second year. Your thoughts on Brock Purdy's rebound performance against the who the finals just played? Damn, there's no
Commanders.
Commanders. There we go. I was saying command. I was thinking them. I was thinking of all these red teams. The Commanders.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's what I expected. I mean, Commanders, first of all banged up. Coach is going to be heading out probably by the end of the season. So I think it was the best possibility for them to have a rebound game. I expected us to fully go in. I was a little worried. I was watching. So I flew out to Buffalo, watched the Ravens 49ers game that night in Buffalo. We were coming back. We went up to Canada to go for our snowboarding thing. And then on the way back, I'm on my phone watching the game. So 2 times back-to-back weeks, I'm watching it in not ideal situations. But I'm in the car and I'm like, wow, I didn't expect us to be so it was kind of tied up, right? 7-7, 10-10. And I was kind of like, why are we not out here just squashing them? But, I had some fans in my head of just like, let's just take a breath. We always dominate in the second half, let Kyle dial some things up, figure things out. And it came together very well. So it's exactly what I expected from Brock. He is who he is every single week. He's doing incredible things. This is his first full year in the NFL. This is just fantastic. So, I've been a Brock Purdy fan from the very beginning. So I love seeing this story unfold.
A lot of fans, and I was on social media, on Twitter, X, and my guy Chris Roscoe's, right? He goes on at halftime, and the fans come in and they're listening on the spaces, and they are just ripping the 49ers. Like, they're playing so bad. First of all, if I remember correctly, they were winning at halftime.
Yeah.
But they weren't winning the way that the fans wanted to see them win. So they were ripping them. They're playing so bad. And I was like, whoa. Like, I felt like the 49ers would pull away, which they did. But I think everybody's kind of on edge, with just the expectations of this team. It really feels a lot like a Super Bowl or bust. I think they are really kind of the premier team in the league right now. Obviously you had that tough loss to Baltimore. But when you look at the 49ers and what they did have happen, especially with the Philadelphia Eagles lost there, they now hold the number 1 seed. And I want to ask you, when you look at the landscape of the NFC, you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, you look at the Dallas Cowboys, the Detroit Lions, and maybe even the Los Angeles Rams. Do you see any of those teams as a potential threat to beat the 49ers?
No, but any given Sunday, right? I mean, I didn't think that we were going to lose to the Browns when we lost to the Browns. I didn't think we'd lose to Minnesota when we lost to Minnesota. So I think any given Sunday, you still have to give respect to these other teams. I mean, this is the team they want to beat. It's late in the season. It's playoff hopes. And, if anything weird is going to happen, it's going to happen this time of year.
I think not even scary thing for me, but when you look at that, right, you mentioned some games. You mentioned the Cleveland Browns game. Didn't think they would lose that game. You mentioned the game against the Vikings. Didn't think they would lose that. Even the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, they weren't playing very well when they went to San Francisco and played the 49ers at home. I didn't think that team would win that game. But there's one thing that is consistent throughout that time, and this is not a bashing Brock Purdy or putting everything on Brock Purdy, but it is very clear in those games, missing a couple players and whatnot, big time players, but in those games, kind of press down the end, at the end of the games, you're turning the ball over. One game can definitely be, you say, hey man, the concussions, and that's the reason for it. And maybe there were some lingering effects in the next game as well. But over that 3 game stretch, man, just turn the ball over far too much from a quarterback. And when guys like Cam Newton come out and say game manager, what he's saying essentially is don't lose the game, don't turn the ball over, and you'll be fine. And I think that even the first half of the Ravens game really like that spoke the loudest to me about like how important that is. You turn the ball over 3 times in the first half, you're supposed to be getting blown out, especially by a really good team. You're down 4 points at halftime after turning the ball over 3 times in the first half. So, the game management part of it is, hey, dude, you don't do that. Like your team is fine because you are so good. You play good on defense. You do play extremely well on offense, and obviously Brock Purdy is a big part of it. But he really has more of a job of managing things. And then we've seen once the 49ers, when they're ahead, they can pour it on anybody. My co-host, and not in a bad way, but my co-host Peacock calls them, they are a great front running team. Mm-hmm. And not in a way that they just, oh man, they're ahead and that's the only time they're good. Well, they're good more times than not because they have a kick-ass team.
Yeah.
Man, when they play from behind, they get real tight, and I feel like that's when we've seen the turnovers, which you can't have. I think that's a direct correlation. So you talk about some of these teams, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys. I think most teams look at it like, oh, you lose the turnover battle, you lose the game. But I really feel like it's been even more important for the 49ers to make sure that they don't put themselves in that kind of position.
Yeah, I agree. But what's interesting is we really struggled against those AFC North teams, right? Bengals, Ravens, Browns. That is a nasty division. It's one of the toughest divisions in all of football. So I'm not, when you ask me if who is a threat, I honestly think that NFC, we are the number one. We got it right. This is the best team in the NFC. It's that division in the AFC that I am a little bit looking at sideways of like, okay, they got our number, right? And even in the regular season, they got our number. So, how do we overcome that? How do we get ahead and be the front runners in games against those kind of teams, those physical, just gritty, just in the dirt, in your face, won't give you, give up anything. Those are some tough teams. And so, again, I still think you have to give them credit. We win how we win, right? I mean, we know what the recipe is. The question is, how do we manipulate that recipe in those games where we need to be finding something else, changing the script? We've talked about, maybe you guys have talked about it on your podcast about, why are we huddling up? Like, let's change up the rhythm. Let's get this going. Like, it's the same thing we've seen years and years. And it's, I hate to complain because we are having a tremendous season. I do think this is a great year for us, but I do worry when we get to these, when we get up against these, like the Browns and the Ravens and teams like that. We have got to figure something out. And maybe that change of rhythm is something that can be beneficial on the offensive side. Interestingly, I was watching or listening to the Warner House podcast, Fred Warner's, pod. And he was talking about in that game specifically against the Ravens, he was, there's 2 things. One, don't give away the ball, but then get your takeaways. And the defense apparently always looks to take away 3 balls. And they didn't. They didn't get any in that game, which that was eye-opening for me as well. So it was still a complete loss. I mean, you're going to look at the giveaways that we gave, but also we're used to also getting those takeaways on the defensive side of the ball.
I think the turnover margin in the 49ers losses versus how they play and wins, I mean, you see a big discrepancy there. And again, that is the case for most teams. But I always look at it, and again, like, not to complain about this, we know how great the 49ers are, especially when they're clicking. Like I said, a great front-running team. And don't mean that in a bad way, but man, they get on you, they will pour it on you. And next thing you know, you look up and you've lost 42-10. You've lost 42-19. Those are scores against 2 of the other premier teams in the NFC. But man, something goes off a little bit and it starts to get a little weird. And you talked about huddling up or not huddling up, playing fast, changing the pace. You and I, we were at the game in Atlanta a year ago. And that was a really weird game because you fell behind 2 scores. You're down 2 scores in the 4th quarter. 10 minutes left, you get the ball. So they're down two. If you guys don't remember this, they are down 2 touchdowns. There's 10 minutes left. So like you're not gonna have a whole lot of opportunities to continue to kind of move the rock, score, and all that. So let's try to speed it up a little bit. They ran what looked like a 4-minute offense. So for those of you who don't know what a 4-minute offense is, a 4-minute offense, you take your time. You make sure that, okay, we're going to run the ball. We're going to do our things. We're going to move the ball slow. We're really trying to milk the clock. They ran a 4-minute offense down 2 scores. And I was so confused. The drive took so long, and they got the ball with about 10 minutes or so left. They drove down the field. They got stopped on 4th down. And there was 2.5 minutes left in the game. It's like, how do you have an 8-minute drive when you're down 2 scores? And I think when I look at this team right now, they kind of struggle with that as well, where when things aren't 100% their way, and I think I saw somebody in the chat talk about Kyle's record went down. All right, where is it? I saw it, but
isn't it like 0 and 30?
Everyone keeps talking about Kyle's bad 4th quarter record while being down 8+ points makes me believe that he'll get that one in the playoffs. I think it'll be in the Super Bowl. I hope that it doesn't have to come to that first and foremost. Yeah. So blow everybody out, wipe them out. But I do think more than likely you will be in that type of situation. Now, it's not just Kyle that has a bad 4th quarter. Every team in the NFL has it's a very small percentage chance that they have a win in the game when they are down 8+ points entering the 4th quarter. And that's skewed because we've seen Kyle play games where they're down 6 points in the 4th quarter, 7 points in the 4th quarter, but did they enter the 4th quarter 8+ down? So that's where the difference is there. All right. But the thing is for Kyle, there is no hurry up offense that they run. They never change pace. You'll see some teams where they come out and they want to kind of get in this rhythm. They'll come out, boom, they get a first down. All right, hey, we're on the ball. We're lining up. We're playing fast. Boom, a quick throw. Boom, a run. And it kind of just gets the other team off balance a little bit. And I've been calling for the 49ers to do that for years. And they just don't because it's not how they play football. And that is fine. The only issue comes
until it's not.
It's not fine. And you need to, speed things up, play a different way. And they're just usually not in that type of position. So I think that's potentially where struggles come from. It's not even so much that every team has a bad record in that situation. It's that Kyle has 0 wins in that situation. 0. Like, it's not like, oh, man, he's, 3-37. And it's like, okay, like, that's not great, but at least, he's done 3 times. Like, 0. He has no wins in that scenario. And to me, that's the most mind-boggling stat when it comes to that he hasn't even gotten one. And again, the rest of the NFL, they're not getting a whole lot of those wins either. I think Andy Reid has been one of the best. He hasn't been in that situation as much as Kyle, and probably because he's had better quarterback play throughout his tenure in the NFL, as opposed to what Kyle got, especially early with the 49ers. But even then, his record is the best out of everybody. For whatever reason, Kyle not doing very well with it. So got to change something up because I try to prepare everybody for not the worst case scenario, but just the things they look out for. And to me, it's always going to be, how do you play in that, when you have to deal with adversity? And so far this season, 49ers have dealt with adversity probably the worst way possible. And it resulted in 4 wins, especially for a team that I feel like is so good and the best team top to bottom. So it is a little odd.
I agree.
Damon Dickerson says, good morning, y'all. For clarity, please explain if extended rest can be a bad thing from a physical standpoint. How might it affect guys emotionally? You know what? So let's talk a little bit about that real quick. All right, the 49ers, Christian McCaffrey, injury update. So, Coach Desi, what do you know about Christian McCaffrey? Or do you want to start with my shoulder? Or do you want to start
whatever you want. I mean, we can start with the 49ers and then tail into yours, whatever you want to do.
All right, let's start with Christian McCaffrey. He's dealing with an injury right now. Is it to the ankle, the calf? We saw them tape his foot up like he was going to go back out there, but then I'm hearing it's the calf injury. What exactly is going on with Christian McCaffrey's injury?
Yeah, it sounds like it's a calf strain. So the calf muscles kind of tailor down and form into the Achilles tendon, which goes into the bottom of the foot. So sometimes when you see taping in the lower part of the leg, it's not necessarily something we have to worry about is Achilles. I think it's more just in the muscle belly itself of the calf. But for a running back, that's an important part of the body. And so we want to just keep an eye on that. I fully expect him to recover. He's got 3 solid weeks now. They've already come out and said he's not playing in the game against the Rams this weekend. So he's out this week. He's got next week heading into the bye, and then he's got that week heading into game 1 for us of the playoffs. So that's 3 weeks, and I fully expect him to recover in those 3 weeks. He takes such good care of his body. I like to call it like segmented. Like he uses every single fiber of his body when he's working out. I just saw a video. I think I talked about it the last time I was on. These animal movements that he does and things that he does to move his body really activates every single muscle fiber. And so he is in a condition that I am not worried about his injury heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I finally saw like the workout videos kind of popping up and how he prepares, and it's like, man, like I need to get on that kind of training. I want to feel young again. I want to feel youthful again, and I need to get to moving around the way he does. Hopefully, I don't hurt anything else. When you look at the rest of the 49ers roster, we're going to bring Damon's super chat back up. He's, how much do you think that maybe resting players is a bad thing? Because if I had to guess, and part of this question down here with the little ticker says, should the 49ers rest most of their starters? You can't rest everybody because the NFL just don't carry enough guys, but Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel, maybe, do you sit George Kittle for this game? You're clearly sitting Chris McCaffrey. Do you sit Trent Williams, and do you put Sam Darnold behind an even worse offensive line than, how they've been this year, which has been up and down? Eric Armstead, I don't anticipate him playing. They probably rest him as well. A lot of guys that will have a long layoff. You're talking about really 2 weeks off to kind of get their bodies back right. But do you think some rust might settle in that type of thing? Or do you think, no, they'll be fine as long as they practice and prepare the right way?
It's definitely possible. You don't want too much rest. Too much rest is never a good thing. And I guess a question to you is, what does practices look like in during the season? Like I would expect the practices aren't really too gritty. It's not really full out. I mean, walk me through what practice is like week to week in the NFL during a normal schedule.
As the season goes on, it gets a little more. It's really more so about making sure that you understand everything from a mental standpoint. So the
game
physical
plan
part of it isn't crazy. It's just, hey, we're going to go through this, make sure everybody's on point. We've watched it, we're preparing for it. Because really in practice, what you do is, training camp is different. Training camp, it's your team working on what they do well, going up against another team, going up against your defense and what they do. And the coaches, they will script certain things so you kind of understand certain looks or, hey, I want to see this today. But for the most part, it's your offense versus your defense. But once you get into the season, it's more so about your offense when it's your offensive time, right? Going up against what an opposing team does defensively. So it's just about being sharp, understanding they're going to have some late movements. What does it look like? Do we understand it? Okay, good, got it. Let's move on to the next thing, as opposed to really beating your body up. And, there's not a whole lot of days with pads on at the NFL level anymore, practice. Week, what is it, 9, 10 of my high school season coaching at Edison, our kids still on, the first 2 days of practice, they're still fully padded. Like NFL, very rare. There's not a lot of contact in general. We do way more contact probably at our high school practices than they do at the NFL level. So they're not really getting that in-game experience during practice. So with a 2-week layoff, how does that affect things? You kind of, it probably takes that first hit in the game to kind of wake you up like, oh, okay, I remember this. All right, let's go.
And that's exactly where I'm glad. That's kind of what I expected you to say. It's the sharpness you're going to lose week to week. It's, the physical stuff, you can start to kind of train your way through that, but it's the sharpness. It's the reactionary thing. Someone's hitting you, you have to react. And so the more you lose that, you just lose that sharpness. I was a dancer. So for me, if I went 2 weeks without performing a piece of choreography, I could remember the choreography in 2 weeks down the road, but the subtle movements, the details within the movement would be lost potentially, right? Because of just, oh, I forgot about that thing. So when you say mental sharpness, that also comes into play. So having those in-game experiences are priceless. And for me, don't shoot me, y'all, but I would not rest a whole lot of them. I would maybe rest some that are more prone to injury. We know Debo has been through some series of soft tissue injuries here and there, so I would probably be light with him. George Kittle sometimes here and there, but everybody else has been pretty good. Christian McCaffrey obviously is already going to be out. I think it's our defense. It's a little bit more banged up, and so maybe we can have a little bit more leeway on that side of the ball. But offensively, I wouldn't sit too many people. I would play them at least maybe 3/4 the game, half the game at least, a couple quarters.
Yeah, just to kind of keep them in that mode, because they will 100% have the next week off, as we know now. Again, 49ers clinching that final playoff spot. We got shout out to Johnny Dale's Football Academy in the chat. He says, "Croc, you going to Senior Bowl? I won't be there this year because I'm coaching 7-on-7, and for the next, I feel like 2 months. It's like we got something like every weekend. So
no, you're going to be on IR, Croc. You can't be in it because you're going to be on IR."
I am kind of on IR. So we kind of started this by saying we were going to talk about, Christian McCaffrey's injury, Eric Crocker's injury. So a few years ago, and you guys have probably heard us talk about this a little bit, but now we kind of know what's going on with me. A few years ago, I was bench pressing and I heard like a crunch in my shoulder. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it hurt at the time. And it was really sore. But because I played so much football, most things that I get that where it's like kind of tweaked or banged up, I kind of just brush it off and it'll get better. Well, it didn't really get better. I stopped working out for like 6 to 8 weeks, or 6 to 8 months. I didn't really work out for a long period of time after that. I decided I'm gonna get back into it. And I still felt that kind of like soreness in the shoulder. I started doing CrossFit. CrossFit is really heavy on the shoulders. And I just said, maybe I just need to warm up more before my workouts. Like maybe that's how I heard it originally. Just warm up more, doing band exercises, band warm-ups, things like that. I spent like 15 minutes doing band stuff before the actual workout. And it never really stopped me from working out. I felt this pain, but it's like, oh, I'm fine. I push through it, and okay, I deal with a little bit of soreness. Well, over the last month, it just got progressively worse. Like it got really worse. I was working out. I was in the gym 6 days a week. I'm doing good. I'm getting right. I'm getting like lean, adding some muscle. I'm eating more. Shout out to my guy Chris Carlson. He kind of coaches me through everything. Calories up. I'm doing everything right. And I go to max out on bench. I have no idea why I went to max out on bench. I knew I was getting really strong. That squat was getting really strong. Deadlift getting really strong. I'm like, okay, let me just spend one day and just max out, just so I know what my numbers are. All right. And I'm warming up on the bench press. I do 225. Boom, I'm knocking that out. 245. Boom, knocking that out. 275. Boom. I do 3 reps at 275, and I just feel like like, damn, what the heck was that? And I get up. I actually left the gym because it was hurting so much. And come to find out, which we've talked about it on here in the past, but I tore my labrum. And I didn't even know it. So Coach Desi has been talking to me, even before I knew what exactly my diagnosis was when I got my MRI. You sent some bands to me. I've been doing exercises with the bands and everything, but man, it just still hurts. There's still a lot of pain there. And I think we need to know, what does Eric Crocker do about this torn labrum, and what are his options?
All right. So I've got some show and tell here today. I wanted to answer, someone was asking, Johnny asked if George Odom would have a shot at returning during the playoffs. No shot at all. He's got a torn biceps, and he should have already undergone surgery probably to repair that. So he is out. But let's go to Eric Crocker's shoulder. So, and I think we've talked about this during one of the previous podcasts. So, this isn't going to be too big of a surprise. So when he talked about it, we identified it was kind of the front of the shoulder he was having problems with. Some of the things I told him it could be tendonitis of one of the rotator cuffs. It could be a biceps tendonitis, because where it is, the biceps connects in. It could be a labral tear. It could be a tear of the rotator cuff as well. So those were some of the things that I was telling him it could be. A lot of that stuff, when it's not acute, meaning he's had this for years and then re-aggravated it, it's not something that you necessarily need to run and have surgery for. It's probably something you re-inflamed. And so that's why I sent him some bands and sent him some physical therapy exercises he could do, but told him if anything hurt, not to do it. And so just for a little bit of exposure here, he and his wife actually yelled at him for this too. He went ahead and did something because he couldn't, I think you said this on the last podcast, you couldn't be shown up by somebody at the gym, or you had to show these kids what was up, and you did something, and then So
Yeah.
some of this is, if
I have
anybody,
my boys with me too. I have my sons with me. There's 2 16-year-old boys, and I always try to show them like, hey, if you guys are doing a workout, like I wouldn't ask you to do something that I wouldn't do. So it's like, okay, you guys are doing all these pull-ups and all these things, like I'm gonna do it too.
all right, can you see the screen?
I can. Here we go.
Okay, great. So this is the humerus. This is the bone of the upper arm here. This is the scapula here, and you've got this little cup here in white. That is the glenoid. That's the part of the shoulder blade that comes over. And then you've got rotator cuff muscles. This is just one of them that connects the shoulder blade to the humerus here of the upper arm. Then here, this blue part is the labrum. So the head of the humerus, even though it's in pink, it's just showing you that that's what we're calling the head of the humerus. It really is the bone, which should be white. So this is all one piece. The bone here of the humerus and the pink part is all the humerus. This is just the part of the humerus that we call the head, which is the ball. It goes into this little socket here of the glenoid. And in between it, you can see it in blue. It's not actually blue, but here in the picture, it's the labrum. The labrum is cartilage. So much like your meniscus in your knee, they are the shock absorbers, help reduce friction and things like that, allows for the humeral head to kind of glide in that glenoid. So you can get tears. There's a tear right here, if you can see it. I don't know how small this is showing up on everybody's screen, but there's a tear here. And so you can get these tears a number of different ways, and it depends on the different, like the location as to what the potential is. So you can get what's called a SLAP lesion, which stands for superior labral anterior posterior tear, which that's what's demonstrating here. You can get one on the inferior rim, usually called a Bankart lesion. And sometimes that happens from a shoulder dislocation. So you dislocate your shoulder, you can tear that bottom inferior is also means the bottom part of that labrum. And again, you can dislocate your shoulder and they don't run you right to the emergency room and you go right into surgery. They usually say, okay, let's see how much we can get this better with just physical therapy. Now, if you're recurrently dislocating your shoulder, that's a different story. So Eric Crocker got his MRI and he's got, I think it's a SLAP lesion, superior aspect of the labrum is torn. And so for treatment for that, again, this is 9 times out of 10, it's going to be physical therapy, anti-inflammatories, rest, ice, with or without a cortisone injection, depending on how big the tear is, how active the person is. Eric Crocker is, in the gym doing all these things. Overhead stuff is going to be painful. They may say, okay, given your level of activity, let's consider going to the operating room. But everybody, this is my biggest thing here. Make sure that's the right decision for you. I tell people sometimes if you feel like you want to try a different route, you want to try going conservative, it's not, at this point, it's not going to harm you. I mean, it's just, you can say, hey, is there a cortisone shot? Will that help? Can we try it? And they may say, yeah, no, I don't know. Let's try it. And then that way you may have better peace going into surgery, right? You'll know that you've tried absolutely everything before you go into surgery. But they may also say, yeah, we could do that, but given that you're active, you do a lot of overhead things, you want to get back in the gym, you have these goals, it's probably a better route to go surgery. They may tell you to do that. But truly, you would have to look at the images, which I don't have. So Eric only sent me the report. I don't have the actual images to see how big, how large is this, becoming a problem? Is it sliding? Things like that. So that's just what you may have to look forward to. So it may be conservative even though I sent you the bands, it's different than when you go into a physical therapy place and they're able to put their hands on you and do, ice modalities, other things that they can do in addition to the exercises. With a cortisone shot could be, you lived with this, you didn't even know you had it for a number of years until you exacerbated it. So can we get it back to calm down and, the way it was before? We'll have to see.
I see someone in the chat. Where was it? Said Crocker. Oh, here we go. He said Crocker is military pressing 225. I'm not military. Well, I don't know how much I military press actually, but here's another one from Akshay. He says I really hurt my shoulder last year during dumbbell incline press. Luckily, no significant injury, but took like 2 months to fully recover. PT help. I think that's my biggest thing. It's that motion. It's like, especially incline, and I just kind of was muscling things, but I could feel myself trying to protect this shoulder, and I probably was putting more strain on my left shoulder. I'm glad that I didn't hurt that because a lot of times that's how it happens. But I could feel myself even when I'm gripping the bar, trying to kind of maneuver it to muscle the weight up, but do it in a way to where it protects the pain that I'm feeling yell at me with this shoulder. So I was doing incline stuff, and I'm like this hurts. I went to more machines, and the machines helped me more with taking the pressure off of it as opposed to doing the free weights. But either way, it's just like not ideal. And I told you, it started hurting me even just to like push myself out of my seat where I get like this sharp pain, or you're getting out of your car and you kind of push up to get out the car, and I'm like, damn, like what the hell, and that's when I was like, okay, I think I might need to go to see a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we hope for the best. I mean, surgery for this is they do it all the time. They can do it either arthroscopically, just through little holes and a camera, and they put instruments through the holes. You get a quicker recovery time. Sometimes they have to open it. I doubt yours would have to be open. Surgeries in the shoulder just suck because you breathe and your shoulder moves, right? So you don't even know that till after you have surgery. You have surgery and you're like just breathing, and you're like, oh my gosh, just breathing hurts my shoulder. But that might be more when you have a total shoulder replacement and things like that. Rotator cuff tears, they're hard to recover from just from a pain perspective. But this is like a little meniscal thing. They'll get in, get out. They'll probably be no longer than an hour in there, and you'll be home.
What is the recovery time on this? Because that's what I care about the most. Forget this shoulder, man. I just want to go work out. I have like these like progress pictures, and it's like, dude, you were on it. Now I've been eating pancakes and all type of stuff.
So I know I wanted to tell you were killing it because I did see, maybe it was on Instagram. I saw something. I'm like, damn, I can actually see some bulking happening. Like you were, I didn't want to tell you though, because I knew you were going to probably be in this headspace. It's like, damn it, this is the worst possible time for this.
I know. So what's the recovery time on something like that?
I mean, just the immediate surgery recovery time is about 6 to 8 weeks as far as healing all your incisions, getting out of your initial post-op feeling. I mean, you'll hopefully go through some physical therapy to rehab your shoulder the proper way back out of it. All of that will happen in the first 6 to 8 weeks. But long term, it really takes the body like 6 to 12 months to fully heal from everything. That doesn't mean that you're going to be in pain or you're going to feel it at 6 to 12 months. That means like, I just genuinely think that we think, oh, we had surgery, and as soon as the incisions heal, you're like, oh, I'm good, and you just go off about life. I say this because a lot of us do that. We go through surgery, oh, we're good, and then we jump right back into the same things that we were doing, when really there should be a transitional period where you work through physical therapy, and not even just after physical therapy, because all that's dependent on how much insurance allows you to see the physical therapist. But even from there, make sure you have instructions from your physical therapist. How do I transition back to CrossFit? What restrictions do I have? Talk to your surgeon about this too. Long term, even if I have the surgery, will I be able to do presses? Is that smart to do it? How aggressive can I be with this shoulder afterwards? Do I have limitations? It's really important to understand all that because, a lot of us think we're 20 and we're like 45. And that can get us into trouble. And then we think the surgery failed us when we don't feel like we're 20, right? So no matter what, moving forward, Eric, the real is going to be, you'll get this repaired, but this could also trigger arthritic problems too down the road. So this might not be the last time you ever have shoulder pain. So really make sure that you follow the instructions. This is for everybody. Make sure you follow your instructions to the T from not just your surgeon, but your physical therapist. And if your surgeon doesn't refer you to physical therapy, ask for it anyway.
Gotcha. All right. I definitely will do that. We got Yaz in the chat. He says, Croc with the fake background. Definitely a fake background here going on. I can't wait. I was telling my wife the other day, like, I can't wait. Well, first of all, for those of you who don't know, remember, I was living in Arkansas, had my office space, had all that stuff. Everything's great. But the moment I sold my gym and the house out there and we moved back to Stockton, I wasn't supposed to be here for a while. We were kind of going to be living in two different places while I figured out what do we do with the gym. Well, the gym, going from the gym and the house out there to out here happened sooner than we were expecting. And I just don't have the space in this Stockton townhouse that's like 2 bedrooms. So right now we've been like, all right, let's look to, buy a house when this lease is up. And I cannot wait so I can get an office space again, because right now, if I showed you guys a virtual background, here we go. This is just like a wall behind me here. It's like outside right there. My daughter's right here. She's sleeping because she climbs in our bed at night, but she can't hear me probably. But anyways, I can't wait to get an office space again. So it really I feel like it throws off my whole mojo with streaming. It's like sometimes I was on the couch in the living room, sometimes I'm in here. But hey, we're gonna make it work, man. We're gonna make it work, bring y'all content, and hopefully by the summertime, we look to buy a house and I can set up a legit podcast studio again, because I had a great setup that I really loved back in Arkansas.
One more thing. Someone else was asking about this. We were supposed to go over it. Ambry Thomas. So his broken hand, I assumed, I was in Roscoe's Twitter space the other day, and I didn't know much about it. I knew it was fractured. I didn't know where. I still am not sure. I expected it to be kind of like what Jimmy Ward had last year, like a boxer's fracture of like this part of the hand. But the reason why I was late today was I was trying to rewatch the game where he had the brace on. He had a splint on his hand. So I was trying to see, and it looked like it was more splinted on this side, kind of over his thumb. So I'm not sure what the actual injury is, whether it's just maybe there's different types of fractures. There's something called an avulsion fracture, where the tendon pulls so hard on the bone that it detaches the bone away. So not only is your ligament kind of pulled away and kind of, not really working, but it's pulled away from the bone. So you have a fracture with it. And so maybe it's just a matter of the surgery might be a pretty simple surgery where they just tack that back down. I'm not sure if it's just a bone fracture where they have to put a plate in, or if it looked like his fingers were fairly free. Usually if you have a fracture of the phalanx, which is this part of your finger or thumb, they can even put a screw in or a pin. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of surgery he has, because they said that, he's expected to have surgery. I think yesterday he was supposed to have surgery, and they expected him to be back game ready, probably with a cast on. Nice club, the Jimmy Ward club will bring back out at the game this week. We'll see how that goes.
All right, and we'll be back next Wednesday to talk about everything leading up to the San Francisco 49ers playing in the divisional round playoffs. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will likely see y'all tomorrow. Until then, I'm out. Peace.